I don't even know. I get to do this and I love it. I'm the educator. But the real brains behind this is Miranda. Miranda actually creates like a schedule and content and what to say. I don't have to tell stories about birds and everything like that. So you guys are going to get a lot out of this today, and it's very applicable to almost everybody in every situation, whether you work in a dental practice or not. And we're going to be talking about from recruitment to retention, how to nurture talent with culture. So good stuff. And I always want to start with some of the formalities here, just in case you're joining us and it's the first time you've been here and you don't know what we do. Well, here's what we do. We are practice coaches, and we primarily only do three things. We actually coach our practices, which is our premier program, our pro coaching program that people say, listen, we're a good practice, but we want to get better. That's where a great or amazing coach like Miranda will go out and help you do it. We also have our To the Top Study Club, which is our mid-tier program, where if you want to do it in an amazing group, we actually have two groups that are running concurrently, and they're in the end of January. And we do it one day a quarter where we get everybody together, share best practices, and we organize content in a way that you can go back and make your practice better. And it's great because January is about alignment and how do you get everybody aligned on your team. And if you're just curious about it, we have what's called the golden ticket. We believe in it so much that if you want to just kick the tires, you don't have to pay anything. You can just show up and we'll roll out the red carpet. We'll actually feed you. The food is amazing. You'll get to meet other people. You'll get to hear what everybody else is doing. You can look around and you can say, is this for me or is this not for me? And if you don't like it, you don't have to stay. So it's called the golden ticket. And Gina on our team, Gina, will be your personal concierge. So join us. And the dates are listed. If you're interested, reach out to Gina at actdental.com and we'll facilitate that whole process. So, and our third, which is our beginning tier, is our best practices association. Now, hot off the press, we actually have our app that's been approved. You'll hear about it in the middle of January. We're going to roll it out, and you'll be able to take all of this great information and take it with you. So if you want to do it on your own, you want to learn about all of these things, you're going to hear about some handouts we have, some tools like the Right Person Scorecard. You can go back in there. All of these resources, because we're geeks about this stuff, we've collected all of them, organized them. Actually, Miranda's organized all of them, and Angela back there, and you can have access to it in the Best Practice Association. So you can start your journey there, join us at To the Top, or if you've tried everything, you're just like, I've tried everything, I just help me do it. You can raise your hand and we'll help you with pro coaching. So that's what we do. And that's why this subject is so important to us. And the experience itself back in BPA is improving constantly. So you're going to see changes and improvements almost every single month at your fingertips. And like I said, we have an app. So, all right, so let's get into it. Today, we're going to be talking about from recruitment to retention, nurturing talent with culture. Now, I'm just going to say this, like, one of the most important things you'll ever do, if not the most important thing you'll ever do in creating a business, is find the right people. And when you find the right people, it changes your whole life. Now, the challenges are bigger than ever in dentistry, so we're not going to spend a ton of time on that, but hiring has become more difficult, even for us, than it's ever been. We actually have to go slower in some respects. We've even changed some seats in who does the hiring. I used to be part of that process. Now I'm not part of that process because I wasn't very effective at it. And the whole point is, how do we make this work? And really the key to making it work is culture. So let's start here. And so people are always like, how do we do this with culture? Okay, so I think the first place we have to start is like, what is culture anyway? Culture is not bowling. Culture is not like, oh, I take my team shopping every Christmas. Oh, it's making everyone feel good. I think culture is poorly defined, and so culture in a dental practice is the sum of shared values, beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors. My favorite word there is behaviors. So you're going to get people that are coming in at all levels. And if we can agree how to behave, it really will shape the experience of how we work together and interact with the patients. Think about this. You get all of that right. Your patients get a better experience. You get a better experience. And you spend a third of your life at work. So the biggest win for, like, everybody wins, but you win because you get to enjoy who you are when you go to work. And a strong practice culture, what we're going to make the point today, it's extremely intentional. It's not accidental. It's not like you're dynamic and you make everyone feel good, but it's very intentional and it's supported by every team member. Because as your team grows, so does the complexity. We now have 20, I think 23 team members or 22, somewhere in there. I never dreamed I would ever have that many team members. People are like, oh, that's so cool. I'm like, no, it's not. I remember we had four. We could do a lot of things together. We could hang out. We could order lunch for everyone. We talked about everything. We were in the same place. Well, as your business grows, you have to find a way to make it feel small again, or make sure everybody's having fun the right way. So it's really about creating a cohesive, performing environment that you don't have to do emotional check. We're going to talk about check-ins, but they don't have to be like, oh, I got to make sure she's okay or make sure he's okay all the time, when we're all on the same page. And Miranda, jump in here because I'll take us off the rails and talk about everything. But like, this is the
Well,
important piece of it. Go.
I was just going to say that we always say you have a culture, whether
Yeah.
you created it or it is what it is, right? It's either intentional or it's accidental. And it's much better to be responsible for the culture of your practice than the culture evolving into something that becomes something that you never really wanted to begin with. So I like the word that you have here around it being intentional, because when you're intentional about the culture, you have more control over the outcome of what it feels like to be in your practice and what your behaviors your team exhibits and whatnot. So again, everybody has a culture. There's a feel, there's a vibe, there's an energy, there's the way of being, there are the behaviors that are exhibited, accepted, and contributed to the environment. It's just a matter of, is it intentional? Is it guided by a set of values and by a vision and by the leader, or is it just happening to us? And I'd like to think that when we're intentional about it, the outcome tends to be much more successful than when we just rely on, showing up and seeing what happens.
100%. And I'm here to say this on this webinar, if you're listening, this is all free for people to receive. Like, I think every company in the country could have an amazing culture if your radio dial is set at the right place. Like, if you really believe this and lean into this, nothing will stop you from having a great culture. But you have to understand what that is and how to do it. And I got it wrong for like the first 15 years of my career. So I'm going to show you this. Now, one thing I've learned for sure is when you have one person and you add another person, possibly the output is two. You kind of find one person, you add another person, maybe you can do more. But when you find the right person, this changes. When you find one right person and you add another right person, it is not 1 + 1 = 2 anymore. It is 1 + 1 = 11, because these two people have skills, behaviors, beliefs, and energy that you can't really describe. And they are going to do things you would never ask them to do. And they'll work harder, they'll be more engaged. And again, it changes everything. And you don't have to micromanage in a lot of cases when this happens. So the reward is very, very high. And sports teams know this. That's why some of the biggest baseball players, when you know one of them and you can invest, that's why people are willing to invest that kind of money for that kind of person. You may or may not like Patrick Mahomes, but the data shows he wins. They've won 2 Super Bowls in a row, and if he stays healthy, they possibly could win another one. So it's worth it to find the right
So
type
a
of
point
person.
a point to that though, because yeah, some people don't like Patrick Mahomes if you watch the show Quarterback. But that's the only thing I know about football.
Look at you.
Because I've watched that Netflix special. But so I think there's a valid point there to be had. So the key to that is the right person,
Right.
meaning the right person fits your core values. So I don't know Patrick Mahomes from the next guy, but he might be an excellent quarterback and he has great statistics and he's got good completion rates. Those are things I hear on ESPN. So he might have all those things, but if he's toxic to the culture, if he doesn't fit the core values of that organization, it doesn't matter how exceptional he is with his skills and abilities. So I think that I know you'll get into that, but I just wanted to highlight that yes, you might see someone, we're talking about recruitment, we're talking about hiring through values to create positive culture. You don't want to just find that admin team member has been doing that for 30 years. They have a great AR rate, but like if they're going to come in and create toxicity within the culture and they rub against your core values of your practice on a consistent basis, they're not going to be a 1 + 1 = 11. So the outcome of that really is stemming from the right person, meaning the person who truly aligns with the values. And I know that's like where you're going now, but I just wanted to throw that in the mix.
Oh, I love your football, like,
I
knowledge.
tried.
Let's keep going with that because I live in Wisconsin, and we had a quarterback, and his last name started with Rogers. And he took his behaviors elsewhere, and you can see the impact on that. So it's powerful when you get somebody who's bought in on, like, the culture. And so here's why it's important in your dental practice. I'm just gonna go right where you were talking. It is crazy important because a positive culture, and you know this if you're listening, it's people feel engaged, they feel supported, they feel motivated. You ask them a question, they go, "Great question. Come over here. Let me show you this." Like, it's just a different conversation every single day. And people look to here's one. Take a look at your team photo. I want to challenge you. Take a photo as a team. Look at everyone's eyes. What do the eyes tell you? Not the faces, the eyes. That'll tell you a lot in any photograph of a group of people. When you get the culture right, there's a higher employee satisfaction. With it reduces turnover. Now in dentistry, more than ever, it's going to be harder to find people, but then you got to grow them and you got to keep them and you got to retain them. And if you've ever lost a great team member, how difficult that is. And employees who resonate with your culture, they're like, this is my jam. These are my people. They're more likely to stay. They're more likely to perform well. They actively contribute to the practice growth. There's just compounding benefits to that. And there's so much data. So I was doing some research on the data. It just goes on and on. But the influence of company culture on employee experience is huge. 70% of employees prioritize culture over salary. I think that's true. People are looking for an opportunity. Higher satisfaction among thriving cultures. You can see that with people's faces. You can see how they engage. You can see that in fast food, which we'll talk about in a second. There's so many opportunities here. And 85% of employees, a big part of recruiting is when your employees, we always talk about patients, like patients come in, they like you and they rave about you. Are your employees raving about you? My hope is they do. They go, no, no, no. I work for an amazing dentist, but she's an even better human being. And let me tell you why. And if you listen to the words that person uses, they will never say anything about the dentistry. They may, but they're going to talk about the character, the behavior, the beliefs, the heart, the empathy of a leader. And so that's a big piece of finding great people is that your people are talking about the practice. And so let's talk about the role of core values in recruitment. And this is huge. This is a big turning point for us and a lot of the practices we coach because a lot of you have ads out. I would say most of you probably have ads out. Some of you have ads that have been running forever and nobody answers them. And you're not sometimes looking in the right place. And so I see these signs all the time. We're hiring, apply today. You must be a core values fit. I think that's important, but I don't know if I necessarily love the core values fit because let me just add this. They got to be a core values addition because let's start with a fit. A fit is this. You're coming in and you behave like us, but it speaks to conformity. It speaks to like, I think a lot of times we go, oh, they got to act like us. They got to look like us. They got to talk like us. And I don't know if that's the right way to look at it. I think they got to be all in on like how we behave and what we believe, but you don't have to look like us. You can bring different skills. I hope you bring different skills that are more creative, but at the end of the day, you align with us, but you be yourself in a way that it's additive, not just like come in and fit in, come in and add to what we have. And I think we're learning that slowly. Like every person, we just hired 2 new people. I don't want them to act and behave. I want them to bring a little bit of themselves and add to what we know we believe in. And 98% of employees say they wouldn't work for a company whose values didn't align with theirs. And so again, a lot of research, but let's take this out of let's just add some context to it. You can teach skill sometimes. Like you can teach people how to do this, you can't teach culture. I don't think you can. Like you either can see it and you lean into it and you can behave this way. The organization's culture is built by the people and it starts with the core values, which are behaviors that are aligned, and people behave in a way that's aligned with those. And I'll say this is kind of be a little controversial. I've had more miserable experiences I haven't been in the dating world forever, but like no one's had worse experiences than me. It's kind of like hiring is like dating. Like you're going to date somebody and it looks so great. Oh, it's so fun. It's so fun. And then immediately or long term, you're like, oh my gosh, we do not care about the same things. We don't even value the same things. I'll say this, if you're young and you're dating and your values don't align, it will never, ever, 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 ever work unless you just go numb and give up on what you believe. You'll make it work and you'll be miserable. So I think importantly, there's got to be a foundation here and it's important. So again, not to bore you with all the statistics, but it's really important to make sure you have a clear idea of what you're looking for before you start the hiring process. And here's why core values matter in hiring. Core values help you ensure you're hiring the right fit for your team, not just someone who's got the technical skills, because you might be looking for somebody who works administratively and they know open dental. Well, that's not the reason you hire them. That might be one of the skill sets you need or some of the knowledge they need, but you need somebody who aligns with your practice culture and can positively influence the work environment. Now, I have a special place in my heart for admin because admin often don't get the nurturing they get, and they're often left in a place where they don't integrate with all of the other team members daily. So they've got to have this probably more than anybody when it comes to a dental team member. But like a good cultural fit fosters trust. We talk about trust all the time, but when you get somebody who believes in your values, you're going to see the respect, you're going to see the motivation. And if there's a mismatch, you're going to consistently feel conflict. What does Jenny always say? It's like the core values is the person sitting in the room. Anytime you have conflict, I'm going to challenge you. Anytime you have conflict with somebody, where's the conflict coming from? Is it procedural? Is it values based? What is it? Most of the conflict I've ever had in my career has always been around behaviors. And so you want to make sure you minimize this as much as possible. And what you have to do is you got to put the flag in the ground and say, look, this is how we behave. If a candidate shares those values of your practice, or they can add to the values of the practice, they're more likely to integrate well. They can stay motivated and they can thrive in their role. Anything you would add, Miranda, before we go on to the other stuff?
No, I feel like you covered it for sure. You did a great job.
Okay, let's get out of dentistry, come back to dentistry. Fast food. I love this company. You guys have heard me talk about it a lot. I actually have a love-hate relationship with the company. I don't hate the company, but like they have one several blocks from my house. And on a day like today, it's crazy around that intersection. I try to avoid it as much as possible because it's crazy busy. And they've got, I don't know how many kids they have outside. Now, this is a new Chick-fil-A that doesn't have the seating area. So all these kids, it's snowing sideways today. I guarantee you there's 12 to 13 kids in that parking lot with the little booths around them and the little pads going, welcome to Chick-fil-A. How are you doing today? Hustling, happy to be there, all that kind of stuff. And my question is, how do they do that? So when you look at their values, and I went to their website today, actually, and tried to apply for a job. Well, this is where you start. You have to start here. Whoa, no, I'm looking for a job. No, I need a job. How do I get here? Well, you got to start here. And before you can even apply, I got to tell you, this is who we are. We are known for a lot of things. But what we really do here, look at this. I think this is a pretty powerful statement. We are audacious. Am I saying that right? Audacious enough. I got to look that up just to make sure I'm saying that right. To believe that a restaurant filled with exceptional, passionate team members committed to serving others can make the community a better place. Wait, I thought you served a chicken sandwich. No, we actually are going to make this community better. And if that sounds like something that would appeal to you, you know what? We'd like to meet you because There's a McDonald's right across the street from my Chick-fil-A. You can try both of them. Go to the Chick-fil-A and just ask yourself how you feel after that. And go over to the McDonald's. And if the kid makes eye contact to you, you'll get an idea of who's looking for what and why they're successful. And I think it starts with a vision at the top. Oh, wait a minute. Don't hit the apply button yet. Got a couple more things got to tell you before you hit the apply button. Something about our culture. You're going to make friends for life. It's fast food. Come on, guys. It's fast food. So you might be thinking as a dentist or a dental teamer, come on, this is dentistry. Okay. You have to think that this is a special place. You're going to make friends here. You're going to make a powerful purpose here. And it starts with the tone from the top. Write that phrase down. Tone from the top. The tone from the top has to be like, we believe in our people. We hire people that believe, and it's a long tail. It's not a short one. You got to believe in this. You got to build your dental practice like you're building it for 100 years. I know you're not going to practice for 100 years. But if you built it like it was going to exist for 100 years, you would do it the right way. You would hire the right people. You'd have some strong values in place. You'd have a strong position statement about your culture. You'd have a strong core purpose statement to be audacious enough to think fast food could change the world. There are people that fix teeth, and there are people that change lives. It's not the same business. And it starts with your people and your tone from the top. So, how do we
Sure.
do this?
Can
Go
I
ahead.
share a quick thought? So
Always.
today I happened upon a Facebook post, and it was in a hygiene community forum. And most people who are watching this at this point might know that hygiene was my first 15 years of my dental career. And there was somebody who made a post, and they said, it makes me sad to see so much lack of passion for this career that I have spent like 30 years so passionate about. So this was a hygienist who clearly loves being a hygienist, expressing in the forum how disappointed she is that, you know, more hygienists aren't expressing this like passion for serving people and the sense of service that we can provide as dental hygienists. That it's become a little bit more of a negative context. A lot of people just like trying to get the biggest bang for their buck, maybe practice hopping, that type of thing. And it was really interesting to really just sit and read through the comments. And what I could clearly hear beneath majority of the comments was one of two things. It was all culture. There was people saying, I absolutely love being a dental hygienist. I agree with you. It has been the most rewarding career. I feel so much gratitude every day that I get to work for someone who I know cares about me, where I feel valued in my workplace. I get to make relationships with my patients. Like, I love being a dental hygienist in various terms, right? Lots of people responding in that same way. And then there was this other side, which was, we aren't respected anymore. You know, we don't make enough money. It's I want to go back into nursing. You know, it was just this clear line within this forum of two different takes on what it's like to be a team member in a dental practice. And I relate to that initial side. I had an amazing career as a dental hygienist chair side, and really feel blessed to have worked within organizations that had really positive cultures, all of which had vision in place and values based, partially because that was important to me. And I asked those questions at the interviews. And so I could hear the tone in those messages from people who have found practices who are intentional about their culture and intentional about who they're bringing on board and what they're creating and what they're nourishing in the practice, and those who haven't found that yet. And when you haven't found that yet, all you can do is search for the greatest dollar. So you're trying to find that fulfillment in some other way. It was really interesting. And I feel like it kind of relates to what you were just saying with that Chick-fil-A about, you know, we believe that, you know, audaciously enough, that we can create something here that you feel fulfilled and giving back to the community. And I think when you can create that for your team members, and when you're bringing people on board, there's this greater purpose that everyone's serving, you're going to have more fulfillment. And then in turn, it's going to positively impact your culture.
I love that story because that story, what you just said, that's like everything in dentistry right now. Part of our core purpose, what drives us is that I see that and I'm like, oh, there's hope. You just got to see it differently. Now, I'll share one additional story because we're in a story together. So I had a proud moment as a dad yesterday. So all my kids are home. I had all four kids in the car and a boyfriend. And so we're driving up to grandma's house and grandpa's house to have dinner yesterday. And my wife is already headed to South Dakota to help him, blah, blah, blah. One daughter's complaining. And my son, who's 17, goes, you know what? If you change the way you look at things, the things that you look at sometimes change. I almost pulled the car off the road. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, I didn't even say anything. I was like, honk, 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 honk. Sometimes your kids, you don't even know if they're listening, but that is so true in life. It's like, if we can see this differently, there's another way to do it. And a big part of our coaching program, like, I don't want to like oversell our coaching program, is like, the biggest thing that happens in our pro coaching program is people think. They think, they change the way they do things, they change the way they look at work, they change the way they look at dentistry, they change the way. And my hope by today is you can change the way you think about this so that that story that you just told, Miranda, you can create a whole nother 10 years of going, no, there's another side to this. So I love that. I love that. So a couple things, how you can showcase. So question is, how do we do this? Okay. Number one, in your job descriptions. First of all, if you don't have job descriptions, you should have job descriptions. Write job descriptions that clearly highlight your practice core values. Don't start with the responsibilities. 90% of them start with, we're looking for an amazing, productive, multitasking human being that can do everything and works hard and stays long. And that's where it starts. But start with the quality of the person that you're looking for first, which points out the core values. These are our values. Here, if read on, if this is you type of it. And then this is something I want you to comment on, like, because Miranda, you're the best at this, is like asking questions. Ask very intentional, value-based questions around these things. Like, can you give me an example when you had to collaborate with others under pressure? Or how do you ensure patient care is aligned with the values you practice? Not like, how long have you been doing this? What's your experience? Give us a little perspective on interview questions and how you change those questions to be value-based.
I love interviewing because I think it's such an opportunity. When people are interviewing, they're showing you their very best, typically, right? They're trying to earn this place in your practice. And so you're getting the best version of them in that moment. And if you're asking the simple questions that everybody's used to, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? How would your former coworkers describe you? Tell us a little bit about the software that you're used to working with, things like that. They're prepared for those answers. They've probably been on 3 interviews at this point and they've answered it 3 times. And so they're feeling pretty solid. But when you really dig in a little deeper and you think about, so I think about the second question, how do you ensure patient care is aligned with the values of a practice? You can even build that in to include your values. So I work with a team who one of their core values is put health first. So you might be able to ask that question, and maybe you are hiring a hygienist since we were just talking about that. And you say, how would you, as a hygienist here in our practice, ensure that patient care is aligned with our value of put health first? So you're building into the conversation from day one that we communicate around our core values. Our core values are very alive here. And based on the response that you're going to get from that hygienist, you're going to have an idea of, are they checking the box and they're a tooth scraper, or they're a comprehensive, because there's different types of hygienists out there. I'm friends with a lot of them. And are they more comprehensive, and they're going to include, I would ask them about their A1C if I notice they have diabetes on their health history, right? They're going to build in an answer for you that helps to have you better understand if they're going to be able to live that core value. So same thing with, can you give an example of a time when you had to collaborate with others under pressure? If you have a core value that's around teamwork or supporting one another or giving everyone the benefit of the doubt or something to that nature, that's a great question to be able to build in. One of our core values here is, we take care of each other or something to that nature. And then you can ask a very pointed question that's going to get a more realistic answer of who the character of this person is, not just what they're capable of doing.
I love it. I love it. Um, Couple other, just because we want to be helpful in this whole thing. Like, if that's too hard for you, you can just say something like this: these are our core values. Is there anything that resonates with you, and why?
Mhm.
Because what you're trying to do is exactly what I want them to think, not just the standard, like, here's why I don't do the interviewing. I used to go, what's your greatest strength? Well, I work hard. I'm a hard worker. I like to work hard. What's your greatest weakness? I'm impatient. So I often want things done now, fast. Like, they're making their weakness their strength type of a thing. So you're like, okay, this one's really driven. People are conditioned to interview and give you these questions. What you want to do is change the process, because you're looking for somebody to say all in attitude is the one that resonates with me the most. And let me tell you why. Because in a lot of my experiences, blah, 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 and that one stopped me in my tracks, because if I can find a place where people really do that, that would be like the ultimate home for me type of a
Mhm.
thing, because I hope it's not BS. Like, I'll even say this. I remember where I was when you were asking me that final question. I was in my driveway. I've told this story a million times. And you said to me, I just need to know before I do this if this is really the place I think it is, or is this a bunch of BS type of a thing? And I was like trying to
I'm a
sell
straight
you.
shooter, Kirk.
Of course you are. And I was trying to sell you in the parking lot. Like, it is. I'm an idiot, but like, it is. We mean well, like, type of a thing. So, like, make sure you get people to think on those questions. And I do like the idea of how do we showcase this? Get your team involved. Have current team members participate in the interview process to gauge whether or not the candidate is fit. Now, this has been the classic one. Once you find the right candidates, you can have your team take them to lunch and give you some feedback. Your team members feel things that they don't. And when they give you feedback, and you've given the right line of sight of what you're looking for, they know that they're looking for a core values fit. They can go and listen. I know this person said they're core values fit, but they're not, because I watched them interact with the waiter and they were terrible. They'll pick up on all these nuances, and they'll be more invested in making sure that Susie was successful because they were the one that voted for Susie. You agree with that, Miranda?
I do, absolutely.
Yeah. So we don't do, Barrett and I don't do the hiring, but by the time we get to talk to somebody, they're pretty much hired. We just need to say yay or nay for the most part, because they've been through this process and they come with strong recommendations from the people we trust. Go, listen, this one is a good one, which makes it all worthwhile and becomes less, you know, complex, I should say. Now, onboarding with core values, couple things. Once we put the signal out there, once we recruit, now we have to onboard. And why do we integrate core values early in the onboarding process? Because if you're going to lose, you're going to lose fast. And if you're going to win, you're going to win longer by doing it fast. And onboarding is important. Now, I say this in everything we do because I heard it from somebody else. We don't really onboard team members, we waterboard them. We just throw them into the mix. Real onboarding, and Ben Erickson, you guys are on today. You guys can give us statistics on this, but they said more than half of retention is the onboarding process. More than half. So if there's one piece, there's many pieces you always want to improve, that you want to improve, it'd be the onboarding process. It's the first real interaction that new hires have with your practice culture. So it's essential to set the tone. And you can do it with a 3-3-3, which is things they have to know by 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months. Make sure everything you do has a little sprinkle or a lot of sprinkle of the core values. This is why we do this. This is why this is important. And early integration of core values ensures the new employees understand and buy into the practice's identity, because you want buy-in, but they're not going to buy in on the clinical procedures and all that kind of stuff. They will, but they're going to buy in on the quality of the people that they're surrounded, and they're going to feel it. They're going to know if these are real or these are BS. And a clear understanding of your core values also provides a roadmap for expected behavior. Once you put the flag in the ground, and they're 4 or 5, we have 6 core values. Now you can evaluate people against them. They're not so subjective. They're always going to be a little bit subjective, but they're not so like, oh, I'm looking for somebody who's nice, who gets along with other people, all that kind of stuff. And it makes the environment more predictable for people to succeed. So early in the process, you have to have the core values in there. And a couple other things. I do really like this. Introduce the values early, establish the onboarding steps, and focus specifically on the practice's vision, purpose, and core values. It's important. Like, here's one thing I would do in the first 3 of the 3-3. What are our 6 core values? And have them test out at the end of the day. What is it? Or end of 3 days. Like, what do they mean? What are they all about? For the most part, I need you to understand what they and how they show up. Now, part of that is you have to have a way to recognize them while they're happening on a regular basis, not that they're just a statement on the wall. But that's an important piece. And then I do like this, and Rand, I want you to speak to this. There's got to be a committee for the success of Susie. So welcome Susie to our team. And Susie has a committee of people that are assigned to him or her to make sure that they're successful. So they can they obviously exemplify the core values. They provide a hands-on experience. They're walking and nurturing them through the whole process. You're going to sit with me. You're going to see me do this. You're going to watch me interact with patients. And my hope is you can see why we do what we do in this whole process. Anything you would add to the committee?
I just think it's really great for a new team member to feel supported as much as possible. Many of us have joined a new position, and like you said, onboarding versus waterboarding, you show up, you get one day of shadowing, and then it's like, okay, you have a full schedule tomorrow. And it's kind of like, I don't even know what we do here because I've been a hygienist for, 15, 20 years, but that doesn't mean you do it here or you expect of me the same things that were expected of me where I was before. So I just love the idea of before that person comes on board, before day one, you've formed a committee for the success of, Susie or whoever your new team member is, and you've aligned with that committee. You chose people, maybe an admin team member, a hygienist, and an assistant, or depending on the role in the practice, they might all be from the same department. But you find two or three people that are really good at exemplifying your core values and what the behavioral expectations are for this role and for this new person. And when they show up on day one, you introduce them. Hey, this is the committee for the success of you. And I want you to reference, these three people whenever you have questions, whenever you have a moment to shadow, or you're going to be spending the first half of the day with so and so. And these people become the first connection that your new team member has to the practice. And it gives them a sense of belonging right from the jump. And it allows for them to learn the right behaviors because you might have some people on your team that aren't always demonstrating your core values the way that you'd like for them to. So you have a little more control over that shadowing experience and what they're seeing and what they're experiencing in terms of expectations.
Yeah, and I love that. And as an owner, you should be able to tell stories. Like a good one for us, I'll just give you an example. Give greater than get. I mean, Laura is the walking example of this. Like we are helping so many different organizations. Like one time I got in the car, I didn't even know where I was going. She's like, "Let's go." I go, "Where are we go?" We went and served in like a shelter in the middle of and we're always doing something. Like she's always looking out for how we can give back to that. And so a new employee or new team member coming in, it's great to tell stories about people. And really, it isn't about what Laura does, it's about the size of her heart and how it relates to the give greater than get thing. Now, one more thing before we go on to this. Like some of you might be like, oh, I don't have time for this. You don't know, you don't understand my schedule. If you're a dentist, you got to find a competitive advantage. You do. You just got to find a way that your practice is totally different than anything else patients would ever see. We had a dentist here yesterday, smart guy. He said this: fee for service is not about the dentistry, it's about the relationships. Like they got to feel that. Like in order to truly be out of network, it's got to be all about the relationship. I totally agree with that. And it's not just you, it's everybody in the practice. And what I mean by that, competitive advantage, number one, are the people in your practice. It's not your CBCT. It's not the fact that you place and restore. It's not the fact that you do airway or conscious sedation. It's the fact that you have the coolest team ever that's all in and you can feel it the second you meet the team member at the front or on the phone, and it separates you in a way you're in a category of one when you start to do that. Now, how do we start after they've been onboarded? We know that they're, a good fit ultimately. Now we have to align team feedback and performance evaluation with core values. And how we do that is you have to set up a predictable, not a reactive, but a predictable way that we keep them long term and they're truly a fit. So aligning performance evaluations with core values is critical. I know what a lot of you do, and I have fun with this, but like we do an annual review. So you write up an annual review, you spend all night doing it the night before, and you write up all these things in a Google Doc, and you print 2 copies out of what you've been doing for the last year and things I want you to improve on. And we're going to talk about this. And then you give a hush raise, which is you don't want any conflict. So you give a little bit of a $1.50 raise in an effort not to leave. And that's not very effective. What you really want to do is make sure that they're aligned core values wise and technical skills and they embody the behaviors. And we're doing this on a regular basis, whether it be at a check-in or right person, right seat scorecard, which we'll talk about in a second. But it's really important early to let the team member know how they're doing. So you only hire people for two reasons. Number one, they fit your core values. Number two, they get results. And so having something not subjective to evaluate you're fitting our values, or, and really to tell you, my experience anecdotally is that when somebody's not a good fit, it's usually never the performance. It's always the values. It's like, you just don't fit our core values. And here's why. And you have to be man or woman enough to be able to have that conversation. But in order to do that, you got to be able to have written values. And what it does by consistently doing this is it prioritizes behaviors. Let me say that again. It prioritizes behaviors when you're starting the conversation with the right person, right seat scorecard, talking about the six values. This is how you measure up against our values. And we use a grading system 0, 1, 2. One is you meet expectations. 0, you're below expectations. 2, you're exceeding expectations. And you have to be honest about that. And that ensures, or it creates more essential, predictable long-term success. Employees, team members who understand that core values are part of the conversation. Remember, you're starting every conversation with core values. Every conversation we start with is, they know, wow, this is really important because that's all you talk about. Yes, it is. They might come from another organization that talked about core values, but we talked about it once a year. We had t-shirts, I don't know. But now you're changing the conversation. It's the, you do it at home. Like whenever you're talking to your kids, if you have kids at home, you're talking about values. And so people will feel more accountable to the values conversation. But again, this is a system. You're putting it at the beginning of the conversation and the performance. And so how do we do that? We measure it with core values. It's a right person, right seat scorecard. I'll show you that in just a second. You can integrate it early and then quarterly for consistent feedback. I like the idea of doing it every couple of weeks. Now you have to get, this is where your creativity comes in as a dentist. You're going to sit down, show them the right person, right seat scorecard. You're going to evaluate them on core values and results. And you're doing it either every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, or every month. And then once they get out of the window of 3 months, you know that they're a core values fit. Now we're just going to do it once a quarter and we're going to revisit that scorecard. So any thoughts before we do final takeaways? And actually, I'll jump ahead. Let me just jump ahead to that real quick. So I was going to say this to the end, but here's an example. And we have this in the BPA. So if you go back in the BPA and you look at premium, it's got not only a tutorial on how to use it, but an actual download. You can see an example of how to use it. But this is our set of core values, our 6. And then we evaluate, gets it, wants it, has the capacity to do it. And you use this scorecard regularly with your team members. And as you can see, we're going to start with core values. We can talk about if they're meeting or exceeding those, core values, and then results. And it simplifies the conversation. So anything else you would add, Miranda, when it comes to,
Yeah, I
core
can just
values?
give it an example. So we have the core value of always be growing. And if, say, this is a dental practice and this is the core values in your dental practice, if you have a core value that's always be growing, and that's a really important value to you, that you're an innovative provider, you're going to be bringing in new technologies, you want your team to also be seeking out what's new, what's the new evidence telling us about fluoride. What do we know now about maybe you would love to have assistants who are eager to learn an expanded functions role. So if your practice has always be growing as a core value, meaning they've decided that it's one of the 5 most important behavior characteristics that would show up with the people that we hire and that work here. But then you have, say, an assistant who's just really not digging into learning the CBCT that you got, or isn't taking scans consistently. Everyone else has gotten really acquainted with the scanner. They're using the scanner for every patient for oral hygiene instruction. They're also using the scanner for all the way down to single crown preps. But you have one assistant who's just, man, I'm so frustrated. And the conversation that as a coach I might hear is more that they aren't good at scanning, or they're not closing the cases, or they're not, it's not really about any of those technical skills or abilities or their case acceptance or anything else. To me, I'm going to immediately know, like, it sounds like this person's really rubbing against your core value of always be growing. Because if everybody else has gotten there and everyone else has watched the webinars and has done the demo, or had when the rep came in, they were engaged and jumping in, like, I want my turn to practice on Jane, I'll get in the chair now and you can practice on me. And then you have one assistant who's standing to the side and not really engaged in the training. They're not going to be as good at that skill or at that ability. They're probably not going to use it on a regular basis. And so to me, it's not that they're not good at those things, and that's the problem. The problem comes all the way back to the core, which is they might not be aligned with that value of always be growing. Now, that's where you can provide the feedback on a consistent basis that's not reactive to the moment. When the third time that you leave the room and you come back in and they haven't pulled the scanner out, and that's so frustrating. And I've said it 3 times, she's supposed to be scanning every single patient. Like, I just can't take it anymore. And then we go in and we provide that reactive feedback of, Jane, I just don't know what's going on. We've talked about scanning, you're not doing it. That's a completely different outcome that you're going to have in terms of being able to develop that person or not than going about it from this manner, where you can say, I rated you meets expectations or exceeds expectations on every other value here, but I have you as a 0. I have you as below expectations on always be growing. And like, here's some tangible reasons as to why. Now, I want to hear from you though, Jane. Like, am I misreading this? Like, to me, it seems like you're not interested in learning new things or growing in that way. And that's really important to us to hear, here at this practice. But I also want to hear from you and try to learn, like, am I perceiving it wrong? Is there something I'm missing? I want to help you get where you need to be because we love having you here. But this piece is missing, and what can we do about that? And then over time, you're going to learn that, like, it just isn't a piece of a core of who that person is, and they may not be the right person for the practice, or they might determine that for themselves. They get, I don't want to be pushed to learn new things all the time, and they go find a practice that isn't doing that. Or they step up and they share with you where that challenge is for them, and it gives you an opportunity to coach and mentor that team member to help them get where they need to be to really be successful in the practice. And again, it's a more proactive approach and not reactive when we just can't take it anymore, and we kind of, handle it in a way that maybe isn't as productive in terms of the feedback that we're giving.
Totally. I was just going to say exactly that. Most conversations with leaders, bosses are reactive. You're frustrated as a team member. I need to talk to you. We'll do a check in tomorrow. And you're just going to vent. So, number one, you're changing the conversation. We're going to make this proactive. Number two, as you can see, this is a system. So, you're going to be really focused on this and write this down. Whatever you focus on grows. So by default, you're going to be forced to focus on values long term. Now, again, this is not a quick fix. You got to be into the long tail of this. Like, you got to be committed this long term. Number three, you're going to find more people that are referred by other team members because they're going to say, listen, okay, for the first thing you need to know about the environment that I work in is, like, core values are no joke. Like, you're going to be with a regular coach and they're going to be into that. And it just changes the entire conversation. And lastly, it forces you as a leader to step up and create the environment faster so you don't frustrate. We had another dentist, I won't use his name, but Barrett and I were having a conversation. And he came into our room and he's like, I heard you say years ago, nothing frustrates a great team member than when you consistently tolerate a bad one. I spent like a year and a half just putting up with this. And I finally did it. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm like, wow, when you do this, you have to speak to those things consistently. Cause if you're like me, you're a wuss, you can't do it. And so everybody else around you, their commitment, their performance, their joy is going down because you're a wuss and you're putting up with bad behavior over and over. And ask me why I know, because I did it forever. So don't do that. By following the system, you become a better leader. So
It's really important to make sure that your core values are alive in the practice as well, so that the team, and we talked about it from hiring through onboarding and really making sure that everybody knows what those core values are. But it goes beyond being able to recite the core values. And so I like to use the phrase, are they alive in the halls, not just hanging on the walls? A lot of us have core values. They're hanging, they're framed, they look pretty, but how much does our team really know? Could you really, like, stop and say, okay, what does always be growing actually mean? What would be behaviors that show up in our practice if everyone was really living always be growing? Or we before me, I'm referencing our core values, but we do exercises with teams where we work through, what would that look like in terms of behavior, things that are happening in our engagement with patients, things that happen in our engagement with each other, perhaps even the anti-core value. What are things that might show up that would rub against that core value? And really have conversations with your team so that they really know when you're doing that right people, right seats scorecard. It's not just a word that they're being measured against or a verb that they're being measured against. There's clarity to like what the behaviors and the expected behaviors are. I have a team that I work with who even gives examples on their scorecard. They've kind of built in a section beneath it where for each core value they say like this might show up like this, and they list out 3 or 4 different examples of how you might acknowledge or recognize that core value coming alive, just so that newer team members can faster start to acclimate to what those expectations are.
I love it. I love it. Do we have any questions? I want to be
We
helpful here.
do. Yes. Time for questions. I am also going to post the CE in just a moment in the chat. So I just wanted to say that out loud. Everybody be on the lookout. If you're looking for the CE for this, it'll be posted in just a moment in that chat box. So we had a question that came in earlier. I'm going to do that one second, simply because the one that just got posted in the chat fits what we're talking about right now. So do you feel it's best to address negative job performance issues at the time they occur, or document and discuss them at check-in? It seems to give a negative tone to the meeting if you wait for check-in. Please advise, we have a team member that is consistently underperforming but is liked as a person.
Ooh, you go first on that one
Oh,
because
you're
you're
gonna give me.
smarter than I am on that. Yeah.
So I think it depends on, so a couple of things. The intention of your regular check-ins, which we didn't really talk too much about today, but the consistent rhythm of a one-on-one check-in is intended to be more around connection and building this connection with your team members so that you have that. I always talk about the book Radical Candor and the concept of caring deeply and challenging directly, and you have to be able to balance those. The one-on-one check-in, when done consistently, like on a monthly basis, 15, 20 minutes, sitting down, connecting with your team members, provides that ability for you to care about them as a person. And that's not necessarily the place or the time to provide performance feedback or evaluation. Now, quarterly, when we bring the right people, right seats scorecard into that check-in, and it's expected and anticipated by the team member that yes, we're going to be connecting here, but we are also going to be engaging and talking about some development strategy and getting some coaching, then they know that's coming. It's more appropriate. I think that if you wait too long at times for certain things to provide feedback, it can create a bigger problem, because what if you're a big practice and you're only having these check-ins every 6 to 8 weeks, because you can't do it monthly. You're not going to wait 6 to 8 weeks to let someone know that they're not being safe with a piece of equipment, or the doctor feels like this isn't happening and we really need it with patients, certainly if it's patient emergency. So you definitely want to deal with issues in the moment, but it comes back to the bigger, broader concept of you can always relate it back to your core values when you're providing that feedback. And most of the time, it's not about the person themselves. It's a system that's flawed or broken. It's a core value breach in some way. It's usually not a person personally wanting to do bad or do ill will or not meet expectations. So whenever I'm working with a team and something like this comes up, and I get you, when they're liked by everyone else, there's still people who are going to know that person is underperforming, even if they're liked. Everybody's been there. They can be the nicest person in the world, but if you're busting your butt and they're not, like, they still see that and they still know that, your other team members. But yeah, I think if you care deeply and they know that, you have a connection with them as a leader that, like, I do value you here, you're able to then challenge them in a positive way whenever need be. Waiting too long can be tumultuous, but it's all about consistency as well. And not just providing negative feedback. You have to balance that with providing positive feedback as well. So when you do provide that feedback and then you do see them actually execute something or take action towards the change that you recommended, you have to validate that, really more so even than the feedback that you're giving in terms of criticism.
Yeah, so well said. And Dawn, your question's such a great one. I was just going to piggyback on that. One of the things I would encourage you guys to do is just change your thought from boss to coach. like use that word consistently. So I like the idea when somebody does a check-in or a right person scorecard, you're not meeting with your boss or your manager. That sound just change it to coach. I'm your coach. When you're hiring people, here's a great question to use. How are you with coaching? Do you like to receive coaching? And so when it's a big performance issue, I think you're right. Like it's a timely issue. Remember we talked about coaching. Can I give you some coaching? I like a question. Can I give you some coaching? Couple things. And so you'll see if people can receive that well, because a great coach, if you watch anything in sports right now, great coaches do two things. They're excellent recruiters and they develop players. They might know a lot about the game, but they do those two things really well. They recruit the right people and they develop people. So like you have to find a way. We're giving you the go ahead here. So um when you're consistent, like Miranda said, I think Miranda, you said it better, but I just like the idea of coach. I don't like being anyone's boss, but I'm your coach, you
Yeah.
know? And I even as a coach, I want your coaching. I ask Miranda all the time. I ask like, coach me. I did a check-in with one of her, coach me. Like, what would you coach me on? So I want to create a little bit vulnerability and trust. Like, I want you to give me feedback on how
Well, you
I'm
gave
doing.
a good word. I was going to say it really, the basis of it all is trust. And there's a book called Thanks for the Feedback, and it talks about what you just said, where most people receive feedback as criticism or judgment or evaluation. And there's really three types of feedback. There's coaching, which is positive, intended development style conversation. I'm giving you this feedback because I genuinely care about you. I want things to be better. I want to coach you. There is evaluation, judgment, or criticism. They kind of fall in that same bucket. That is another form of feedback that you might receive. And then
Right.
there's also compliment or accolade or reward. And so it's great to preface the type of feedback that you're giving to the person, because then it makes it easier for that person to filter, what is this feedback I'm getting? If you preface it with like, I care about you so much. I think you're a great person for this team. And because of that, I want to give you some coaching, some constructive,
Love it.
positive feedback. There's still gonna be, until trust is really fully formed, there's still a little bit of defense met with that, because nobody likes to hear negative things about themselves. But when it's prefaced, they're gonna automatically put it through that filter of like, this is coaching, and try not to process it as evaluation. We do
Love
have a
it.
couple other questions, so I
Let's
want to
do
throw
it.
those
I
in
love
because
it.
I know we're hitting the end of it. And Julie did post the chat. Thank you, Julie. She posted the CE. So Lisa asked earlier on, she said she feels that their practice has a positive culture, clear core values, many long-term team members, but with the state of the dental world, everyone focusing a little bit more right now on what can you do for me? And the whole I deserve to be paid more conversation that's going on. How can we refocus the attitude and keep it geared towards that positive culture?
You go first again. So you like that,
You guys are
please?
stumping Kirk today. Um, I think that this is such a big question, Lisa, and
Yeah.
again, probably could do a whole webinar. To me, it does come down to trust and that concept of I. So your first two words mean a lot to me. I feel that our practice has a positive culture. So we love to actually measure that. And so we have a practice health score that all of the coaching clients that we work with every quarter, the team takes this practice health score. They rate different aspects of the practice. A big piece of that is around culture, because a lot of times we can feel a certain way, but there might be underlying things there that we aren't aware exist. So I'm not saying that is the case for you, but anytime I hear, feel versus what we know, there is a bit of a difference. And you have clear core values. And then what I would question is, are they alive and well? So again, that concept of like everyone knows them, but does everyone know what they really mean? Like, what is always be growing, and how does it provide impact to our patients? It goes back to that conversation we had earlier about needing to find fulfillment, this being a meaningful profession, being able to serve others, the intangibles that happen in the practice. If all of those things are really alive and well, and the people that are on your team believe in those same things, there's going to be a lot less of, I just need more money, or I'm not staying. I'm going to go explore my other options. I got
Yeah.
this other offer and I'm considering it. Can you counter? I've taken $1,000 a month pay cut before to work in a practice that I felt like fit my core values better than maybe the one that I was in. I went through that experience myself where it was just rubbing against me the wrong way. And I'm like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm sure there's somewhere out there. And I took less money to be a part of a company that was able to provide that for me. So I would just first challenge you to say, like, how could you measure to some degree the health of that culture? How could you have conversation around the core values to really gauge, does the team really get and believe, and is everyone aligned with what we believe we do here? And that might start to help you to refocus some of that. And when we keep those things front and center, Kirk, we were talking earlier about consistency. You have to consistently put it out there and not just hang them up on the wall and everyone can recite them, but everyone could recite them and then tell you exactly how that shows up, how it shows up in patient care, how it shows up interpersonally.
Yeah, I love it. Miranda's answer is better than mine, way better than mine. But here would be my answer. It's the right person, right seat scorecard. Here's why. It's a system and you're consistent with it. Now, let me just say this. Once you start using it across the entire organization, your best team members will get better results. They will get good at what they're doing. And you're going to see it. They've earned this. Like you're going to go 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and they're going to come to you and go, "Can I share with you? I want to." They're going to ask you for a raise, and at that point, when you're consistent with it, you know that they've earned it. And now we've created a format for why you're going to want to compensate that. And let me add one more thing. You have somebody that's overperforming in core values and overperforming in results, you want to give them a raise. And now we have an avenue to what you want to do is proactively mind these conversations instead of reactively, which is what I used to do. People come to me and go, I'm not happy. I work hard, harder than anybody here, and I want to raise or else I'm going to go there. And that's very reactive. And if you're a wuss like me, you just give them a raise to keep them around because you don't want them to leave. And so I know you probably won't like that question, but I will tell you when you start using the right person, right seat scorecard, you will get asked for raises, but they will come at the right time with the right data and the right context. And you know they're coming. And you now have the perfect opportunity to talk about why and how. I don't know if that helps, but cool.
That was
Any other
great.
questions?
No, I just answered one more in the chat. It was just based around who should conduct those check-ins and quarter reviews. And basically what I shared, and you've seen that if you can see it there, is that it's different for every practice, to be honest. If you're a smaller practice, it's typically the doctor. Usually as practices grow, there's more like team engagement, team development that's accountable, moved on to like an office manager or maybe some team leads. And so based on kind of who is responsible for team development in your practice, that person should definitely be a part of those check-ins. I really do like for the doctors, even if they're not that person as your team grows, to periodically still have the opportunity to do check-ins and engage with the team members. But it is typically customized a bit per the practice based on the size and your function and accountability chart, how your organization is broken down. And then the other question that we have, and then we do have to wrap to honor everyone's time. You're welcome, Katie, is around if this webinar will be available. So yes, this particular webinar is going to be available and it will live forever also in the BPA. So I did answer that in the chat with the person who asked me as well, but I just wanted to answer it out loud for anyone else who might have the same question.
Yeah. And Katie, great question. She asked the question about like who should do it. So
Mhm.
I'll tell you, we experienced the same challenge because we now have, I don't know, 22 or 23. So I can't do the check ins anymore. Logistically, I just can't. So they're done with their coaches. So our team members get, but Barrett and I interchangeably rotate and we check in with every team member in a very systematic way. Remember, people don't quit dental practices, people quit people. So even though I have a team member who's checking in with their coach, I very much want to have a systematic way to go personal high, personal low, how you doing? Give them a space where I know them. Like they've moved, they have challenges. Like I want you to know I care about you. So if you're a dentist listening and say, I don't have time, somebody else does that, you're basically, I think you're absently subtracting to the culture. Like I want to know that person at the top. Like I do, whether it's a 15-minute conversation, but it's a systematic way where we've got time to just connect as a human being. So just a thought. Cool. All
Great.
right. So thank you guys for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Again, all these resources are all back in the BPA. So if you go back there, we'll send you guys links and how you can go back. You can get all these resources. It'll show you how to do this. You can print them off. You can watch videos, webinars like this back there to add instruction. We're going to keep bringing it. And can't thank you guys enough for showing up. So hope you guys have a wonderful holiday season and enjoy your day. All
Thanks,
right.
guys. Thanks for being
Thanks,
here.
everybody.